Well, I think he's got a big ego, and I think he likes being relevant and likes being brought up in all these coaching searches, but it was never certainly the Eagles' mentality. And I'm not even sure if his side brought it up, to be honest with you. He's not going to come back. I mean, you talk about the cushy gig he's got now and how highly paid he is, and to come back in the NFL, it's very similar. He's this generation's Sean Madden. He really is, as far as getting that job, and it's going to be very, very difficult to get him out of the booth. But as far as fan bases, you have to – the vast majority of any fan base, not just Philadelphia, but everywhere around the country, is casual. It's not hardcore. So when they hear names like John Gruden, or it could be Bill Cowher, it could be Brian Billick, they know who those people are. And it sounds a lot better than Adam Gase or Doug Peterson or Hugh Jackson or any other name you want to come up with. And all of a sudden it's a disappointment when you don't get that guy, and it's not realistic to begin with. So it's difficult for the Eagles. It's not realistic. It's not going to happen. I don't know why people throw those stories out there, but nonetheless it got out there. But it's certainly there's certainly nothing to it.
Yeah, we talked with Anthony Becht earlier, who played for Gruden, and he said, no, not at all, no chance. And you can use me as a direct source on that. He's not coming back to coach for the Eagles or anybody else, and basically said the only scenario he can envision that he would want to come back to coach is if Belichick stepped down and basically handed him this team and said, here, you take it, because he seems to think that there is not any desire for him to come back. Do you think we'll ever see the guys that we hear so much in this time of the year, the Grudens, the Cowhers, the Dungies? Do you think we've seen them for the last time on a sideline?
I do. You never say never in this league, because they can throw the kitchen sink at you, and that's another aspect that didn't make sense. Because if John Gruden is going to come back, he's going to want control of the entire football operation, and that's not going to happen in Philadelphia. So you don't have to go very far with this story to see it's not going to happen on so many levels. The only way, he is 52, as I said, so he's still a relatively young man, and there is a competitive aspect of it, and I'm sure he thinks he can do a better job than the vast majority of coaches in this league, and maybe he could. But when you have that job, it's tough to walk away from, and especially when you think about the toll it takes on your personal life, as far as, you know, these guys working 16, 20 hours a day and taking time away from other things you might enjoy. It's just, it would be very, very difficult for any organization, including New England. I don't think he'd come back for New England, to be perfectly honest. I don't think he's coming back to coach in the NFL.
John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, at JF McMullen. Deshaun Jackson, sit down with MMQB. I thought it was really cool. He talked about a lot of things, including his time in Philadelphia, playing with McNabb and Westbrook and what they did for him. But his comments on Chip Kelly, I'll read them for the people out there who haven't seen this. They're over at 97.3 ESPN.com. He said, quote, I'm a firm believer that bad karma comes back on you. When you ruin a team like that, you do things to people's families, you release people, you trade people, you get rid of good players who build something with the community, with the fans, with the kids. To have a guy come in and change up the team like that, I just believe in karma. I don't have any bad words to say about him as far as what he feels he needs on his roster, but the guys that were on that roster created something special. From Macklin to McCoy to Cole to Harrimans and myself and Boykin, it goes on and on. When we were there, we were a brotherhood. So for everyone to go their separate ways and to see how it all ended up, it's a very sad thing. Did you ever think that you would believe and hold true to what Deshaun Jackson? I thought he was pretty fair and eloquent with what he said.
Yeah, well, those were pretty bad words, so I don't know why I didn't say they were bad words. But look, this is one of the few times I'll defend Chip Kelly, in that this is a tough industry, and every coach has to move on from certain players. So if you take individual aspects of his moves out, a lot of them make perfect sense in a football perspective. Todd Harrimans, for instance, one of the guys he mentioned. He's a descending player, was cut by Indianapolis. He's not very good anymore. Trent Cole was on the downside of his career. Even Evan Mathis. If you take them all separately, you can kind of spin it and say, this makes some sense at least. But when you put them all together, is where it blows up on Chip Kelly. And more than anything, it's not about the football part of it. It's about the other part of it. And it's about the big personalities. And that's sort of what Jeffrey Lurie was talking about with emotional intelligence. This is a different animal, the athlete of this generation. And you have to understand how to get the best out of him. Chip Kelly did not in this environment. Maybe he learns from it. Maybe he goes on to be successful somewhere else. Maybe he doesn't. But he was bad at it here. And really, it's about Deshaun. It's about LaShawn McCoy. It's about Evan Matthews. It's about Brandon Boykin. Those guys who had personal problems with him just didn't know how to deal with people.
John, you look at Chip Kelly. He got an interview with the 49ers, but has not been interviewed anyplace else. His name doesn't seem to be coming up anywhere. What does that tell you about what his name has become around NFL circles?
Yeah, he took a big hit reputation-wise, and there's a lot of people in this league that are very happy he did not succeed here because they had that old-school mentality, and they didn't want to see the college guy come in and succeed and change the dynamics of how things were done on the NFL level. So there's a lot of talk behind the back saying, I told you so, and this can't succeed, this doesn't succeed. And a lot of it's unfair because, as we said, when he did have players, he had top 5 offenses in this league. So to me, he's already proven his offense can work if he has the right people in it. However, my bigger concern with Chip Kelly is not all the nonsense. It's not the fact that he doesn't say hi to people in the hallway. It's not that he's got 8 plays that he runs over and over again. It's the fact that he runs the players into the ground. And you're going to talk about the back end of guys' careers getting shorter and shorter if he continues to run things the way he ran them in Philadelphia. There's just not enough bodies. There's a huge difference between the professional level and the college level. You only have 46 guys on game day, and he's got to adjust to that.
Yeah, and I think we were talking about this on Tuesday. I don't know if we brought it up on the air, John. If you can give an example, guys like Lane Johnson, some of the things they said that kind of indicate that.
Yeah, we did. I mean, Lane had the great quote when he said, "I'm tired of this spread bleep. I've been running it since college," and you know, he's talking about the tempo, the constant grind. And he specifically talked about the effect it had on bigger players like him, offensive linemen, who are constantly going from OTAs through the end of the NFL season. And again, we don't know. There hasn't been any long-term studies about how many days this is going to take off the back end of a guy like Lane Johnson's career. If he continued to go at that pace year after year after year. But there's one guy who blatantly said he's tired of it, and he's looking forward to getting into a more traditional environment.
John, when you see a guy like Kelly, and by the way, I'm reading your tweet here from the other night, you know, how interesting it would be for him in San Francisco. This is Tommy Gamble basically vouching for him. Is this the only reason why Chip Kelly's getting an interview anywhere?
I think so. I think it is. You know, he is very close to Tom Gamble, but if you look at the other aspects of that organization, how Trent Baalke kind of went off the rails with Jim Harbaugh and Jed York and the way he does things as an owner. Very hard for me to believe that those two could coexist with the same coach that was here. Now, the hope, similar to Josh McDaniels, if he ever gets another head coaching job, but he's had a lot of years in between his first try and his second. You hope a guy who fails miserably at certain aspects of the job learns from his mistakes and grows. We never saw that from Chip Kelly here, and we haven't had time to say where he can contemplate and think and say, yeah, you know what, I probably didn't handle this the best way. So I'm not sure he's going to be coaching in this league next year. I'm really not. And if he is, I think it's going to have to be in a place where he doesn't want to go. Maybe Cleveland, maybe somewhere like that, who's got a more innovative leadership group now and would be more willing to accept some of Chip's Chip's non-traditional ways of looking at football.
Well, when you look at Chip, and let's throw Doug Marrone, who has had a reputation problem as well. There's some reports that Browns players don't want to play for him, that I believe Joe Thomas said if he was hired, he wants to be traded. It sounds like this guy – but are you telling me that Chip Kelly and Doug Marrone aren't two of the best 32 coaches in the NFL? They're not two of the best coaching options? I mean, people can say what they want about Marrone. He went 9-7 with a team in Buffalo that hadn't had a winning record since the Kelly years.
Yeah, and people can say whatever they want about Chip Kelly, but he's got a winning record. There's very few in the league fired with a winning record. I mean, people were up in arms in Tampa that Lovie Smith got fired, and he won 8 games over 2 seasons. Jeff Fisher has had, I think, 6 winning seasons in 20 years, and he's back with the St. Louis Rams. Yeah, I don't think there's 32 head coaches better than Chip Kelly, but there's more to it than that. There really is, and that's the part of the job he's not very good at, and the fact that you have to play the political game a little bit. You have to get along with other people. It's not done in a vacuum where people are just looking at your value as an X's and O's guys or your value with tempo and a system. There's other parts to the job that he has not performed very well at, and that's why he's not employed right now.
No, he's not. He interviewed with the 49ers. Doug Marrone, by the way, met with the Browns, and obviously Doug Marrone and Chip Kelly both hired in that 2013 year. Let's look at some of the other stories leading up to this. Adam Gase, Dolphins with him, confirmed for the Giants. What do you make of Gase and his kind of odyssey around the league right now?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, some of the luster is coming off because when you keep visiting, and he's basically been with a different team every day, you would think at some point if somebody wanted him that bad, they would make the move to try to keep him in the building, as I talked about here in Philadelphia, as some people speculated would happen in Miami.
Right.
It keeps not happening. So all of a sudden, the guy who everybody thought was the belle of the ball, yeah, he's getting interviews left and right, but nobody is stopping what they're doing to say, I have to have this guy. And I think that says something. That's not to say I certainly think he's going to be a head coach somewhere in this go-around. It's looking, I would have put it at 75% for the Eagles at the beginning of the week. Now to me, it's almost 50-50 and sort of dipping below 50, especially if they get to that Doug Peterson interview and are impressed with him. But I still think the Eagles are going to go in that type of direction. They're going to go with an offensive guy, a younger guy, and they sort of want to mimic what happened with when they brought Andy Reid here.
Talk with John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com, and, of course, the NFL playoffs this weekend. So Adam Gase is on a journey from Milan to Minsk, and over there we got Paul Gunther, who's got a game this weekend, and Doug Peterson has got a game. I'm sorry, I got these guys laughing at my comment.
Rochelle reference.
There you go. Gunther and Peterson both coaching this weekend, and so that tells me, John, that on Monday when we're back for the Sports Bash, and possibly Tuesday when you and I are at the Golden Nugget, the Eagles will not have a head coach in place.
Yeah, most likely not. I mean, they're committed now to going through that first round of interviews, and then you'll have presumably the second round. And there's no doubt in my mind Adam Gase is coming back here for a second interview. They indicated that when he left. The open-ended part of it was just a date. People reported over the weekend, but there's never a real concrete date. So I think more than anything, it wasn't an indication that they've soured on him. It's just that they want to finish the first round of their interviews before they get to the second. And whether that's prudent or not, only Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, Don Smolenski, I mean, if they're not comfortable with somebody like if you go back to 2013, they wanted Chip Kelly. They targeted him. They went after him. When he spurned them at first, that's only when they went away from him and sort of had the other interviews and brought other people in. Then he changed his mind. Maybe they were bit by that and they didn't want to jump too quickly and see what else was out there. That would be my assumption of what's going on.
All right, John, let's look at a couple other quick things here in the NFL circles, as obviously the NFL playoffs are this weekend. We'll dive into them a little bit, but the Hall of Fame ballot is out. Brett Favre, Terrell Owens, the two big names on there. They are first-time Pro Football Hall of Fame finalists. Favre's obviously in there, but I guess Owens is going to be the lightning rod. What's your thoughts on T.O.?
Well, he's a Hall of Fame player. Unfortunately, personalities come into it, and media members kind of hold off-the-field things against certain players, and I think Terrell might have some issues with that. So I'm not sure he's going to be the slam-dunk first-ballot Hall of Famer that his career on the field would indicate. Never mind the fact that for whatever reason, people tend to look at this era, certainly the era we're in, but even going back to T.O. as those numbers being sort of out of skew because of the way the game has changed. So I think it's going to be difficult. I don't think he's getting in the first year. I really don't. Certainly Favre, though, is slam dunk. And he'll certainly be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
All right, let's go over the games, John. We haven't talked a lot about them. I'm kind of waiting for Friday to get here, so I'm interested to get your take. Let's look at tomorrow's Saturday AFC action. Kansas City, Andy Reid with the 10-game win streak. Houston has been a great defense. They're playing at home. They've won the division with 5 different quarterbacks here. But is it Andy Reid's time? Is this the year of the Chiefs?
Well, I don't know if it's a year. I think they're going to win this game. I think they're a better football team, even though they're on the road, obviously. And you're right, Houston's a very good defensively, but so is Kansas City. And they're getting Justin Houston back. Remember, he hasn't been playing for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and he's their best pass rusher, best defensive player overall. And when you think about playoff football, you need something from the quarterback position. And while Alex Smith is not great by any stretch of the imagination, he has played very well in the second half of the season. He's that game manager type where some people don't like that term, but he doesn't make mistakes, and he certainly doesn't make the game-changing mistake. And if it's Alex Smith and Brian Hoyer, I have to lean towards Alex Smith.
Yeah, I might agree with you on the that quarterback assertion as well. Let's go look at Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. You talk about quarterbacks there. It's going to be A.J. McCarron in, Andy Dalton out. Is that enough to have Pittsburgh win on the road?
I do, and I feel sorry for Cincinnati. This will be their 5th straight loss in the opening round of the playoffs if they do lose. And you go back to last year when they had so many injuries. A.J. Green missed that playoff game. Tyler Eifert was gone. Marvin Jones wasn't there. So they keep getting to the playoffs and being in very bad position when they get there. And it's not that Pittsburgh's got some injury issues too. Le'Veon Bell's been gone, and now D'Angelo Williams isn't going to play. But you look at Ben Roethlisberger against a guy who's barely played in the NFL, it's similar to what we just said in Kansas City, Houston. It's tough for me to pick A.J. McCarron over Ben Roethlisberger, who might be the best quarterback in the AFC right now if you consider that Tom Brady has the ankle problem and all the issues that Peyton Manning has. So I think people looked at the Steelers late in the season and said, this is a team I don't want to play, even though they haven't played well the last 2 weeks. And I think they're going to turn it on and beat Cincinnati.
If you can't take A.J. McCarron to beat Roethlisberger, can you take Kirk Cousins to beat Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, in a weird way, you just called me out on that. But a lot of that has to do, I think Kirk Cousins is underrated. I think he's played well this season, especially at home. His numbers are off the charts at FedEx Field, and I just think Green Bay's going in a bad direction. They have the receivers stink. Their offensive line can't block. They have so many injuries. And all of a sudden it's all on Aaron Rodgers' shoulders. And as good as he is, and I think he's still the best quarterback in all of football, I don't think he can overcome all the deficiencies the Packers have right now on offense.
All right, last one is Minnesota against Seattle. We got a really interesting game. It's going to be freezing cold. You got a defensive-minded Seattle team. They like to run the ball, so it sounds like things are going their way. But in front of them is the two-time defending NFC champions.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a much tougher game than people think. Everyone saw Seattle beat Minnesota 38-7 back in Week 13. They say they're just going to do it again. But I think people need to realize Minnesota was out without their 3 best defensive players in that game, Linval, Joseph Harrison-Smith, Anthony Ball back. You mentioned the weather. This is going to be one of the coldest games in NFL history. The Seahawks are going on the road. They're a West Coast team. Remember, that's an early game. It's 12 o'clock Central. So it's basically on the East Coast. It's like the Seahawks are playing at 10 in the morning. And we all see how West Coast teams struggle with that, going from west to east. So there's a lot of things trending against Seattle in this game. They're the better football team, but I think it's going to be a 50-50 game in the fourth quarter, and I think the Vikings might get it.
Yeah, I feel like that's the same way. I'm going Minnesota, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, and Washington, my 4 picks for the weekend games here. So we'll see them all right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, we'll have more on the Eagles coaching search on Monday with John at 4:05. See if a new name emerges. A couple of names are interviewing over the weekend. We'll have the latest on that on Monday's show. Thanks, John. Have a good weekend.
Hey, you too, Mike.